Well, joining me is General Jack Keane, a retired four-star general, former Vice Chief of Staff of the US Army, and he serves as chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Keane, thank you once again for your time. Russia is threatening to use nuclear weapons. Russian state television is even giving viewers opinions to get them used to the idea of nuclear war. How high is the risk?
Well, in terms of using strategic nuclear weapons, I don't believe it's that high, even though they've been communicating something like that on their state television. It's pretty outrageous. I've never seen anything quite like it in my mind since we've had these nuclear weapons, to have a country actually threaten the use of them like that and do it on state television. Look at the United States, Britain, and France. We have a significant strategic nuclear deterrence that would certainly force Russia to think twice with ever using weapons like that, because they would lose their country essentially, and most of the people in it. And it would be a human tragedy, certainly of epic proportions, because the United States would be lost and most of Europe as well. So I think something like that is remote. Certainly using a tactical nuclear weapon inside of Ukraine is something they've been brandishing as well. And by the way, they're doing this. They're brandishing nuclear weapons, Andrew, because they are surprised by the unity that the United States and NATO and other countries have had to come to the assistance of Ukraine. And it's not just moral support. It is significant weapons that are being provided, and it is definitely value added, as well as the humanitarian and economic assistance as well. And certainly the sanctions are taking an effect. But I'm convinced the real issue is the fact that we're really helping the Ukrainian military to succeed on the battlefield. If they were talking about using a tactical nuclear weapon, I think that would be a game changer. In my mind, that would bring the United States for sure into the war as a result of that. Not necessarily to use tactical nuclear weapons themselves. I think we would probably withdraw from doing that. But our mission would be to destroy the Russian army in Ukraine, put their fleet at risk in the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, and put three of their three air bases in Syria at risk. So I'm trusting that our administration is talking to the Russians very privately, not as publicly and in detail that I'm suggesting here, to prohibit that kind of reckless use of a tactical nuclear weapon.
I'm hearing you, and you are a rational man thinking rationally. It worries me only that Vladimir Putin has so far wildly underestimated Western resolve, Western response, and he might have painted himself into a corner. Do we know that he's being rational? That's what concerns me.
I agree with you. We have concerns about Mr. Putin in terms of his state of mind, his rationality. We always thought that Putin was somebody that you could actually reason with, although you disagree with him vehemently. But he always seemed to respond to the sense of strength of an adversary he had, and certainly always took advantage of an adversary's weakness. And that, I think, is the reason why we're in Ukraine to begin with. I believe he felt, Andrew, that the Biden administration would present them an opportunity to conduct an invasion, and they could get away with, because he didn't expect much response from President Biden based on the history of the past with the Obama administration, and also look at the 4 years under Trump. Regardless of the politics surrounding President Trump, no troops ever showed up on a Ukrainian border for 4 years. 60 days into the Biden administration, there are 70,000 troops on the Ukraine border. And I believe that is because he saw that as opportunity, and he also believed in his mind that he had weakness in the President of the United States.
It's so fascinating, isn't it, assessing Biden's role in this. One is that his weakness did encourage an attack, in my view, for example, the catastrophic withdrawal from Kabul. On the other hand, I have to give him points for, since the war started, how he's stepped up the defence and managed to get some NATO unity in this. So I think, a mixed record there. But right now, Russia has as you very well are aware, launched a second offensive in Ukraine's east, much more concentrated, got beaten in Ukraine's north in particular. It's withdrawn from there, concentrated on the east. After a couple of weeks of this renewed offensive under a single commander this time, what progress is it making? Because right now it seems stalled, and I don't know how long it can be sustained. The Russians seem to be taking an awful beating at the moment.
Yeah. Well, let me just get at that. But first, let me mention what you just suggested. I agree with you. The Biden administration sort of woke up to the reality that the Ukrainians had an opportunity to win this war, much to everyone's surprise. And since that reality has sunk in, the United States, NATO, and other countries are providing robust capability to the Ukrainians, and also are joining to the reality is we're not looking for an agreement here that leaves Russian troops all over Ukraine's territory. What we're trying to help the Ukrainians do is achieve a military victory here. So I totally credit the administration for the position they are in now, and also the support they're receiving from other countries. As to the second offensive, it is stalled. They made some incremental moves. They've been relying much on their artillery, which is the strength of the Russian ground forces. But what has shown up, Andrew, is the same level of incompetence that they were operating in the north. And what am I talking about? They're, as opposed to focusing and concentrating their forces in an area which is much smaller than the area in the north, and really driving them towards a decisive consequence, they have spread their forces out on 4 different axes. And as a result of that, their advances have petered out. And the Ukrainians are very adaptable. They have static positions here because of the open terrain, fortified positions. But they have mobilized their 2 mechanized brigades on different axes, and they have gone after the Russians and stopped them cold, as a result of that. That adaptability and flexibility is absolutely superb on their part, something the Russians just don't have the capability to do. Also, I've come to the grips that their generals have serious problems about their ability to campaign plan and actually achieve decisive results based on a synchronization of their forces. They just cannot do it.
Britain's Ministry of Defence estimates that Russia committed 2/3 of all its ground forces in this war, 2/3, and 1/4 of the units in there have been made combat ineffective. Does that mean that the Russian military might is now broken, and for how long?
It is significant. These casualties are quite excessive. The casualty rate is somewhere around about 1/3, which is higher than some of the casualty rates we experienced in World War II, Vietnam, and the Korean War. Quite staggering. And it really brings up huge problems that the Russians have. I mean, it's inexplicable that they are having so many problems. But here's what we have learned. As I indicated, the generals cannot campaign plan. Number 2, they have significant command and control problems of their forces. Their forces themselves lack the proper training and discipline and skill sets that you would have to be able to react to contact with an enemy and fight effectively using basic fighting principles that most armies ingrained in their tactical fighting forces. The Russians lack that. They have significant logistic problems. They're still having them. Much as they had in the north, they're having them all over again because why? These are systemic problems that you just can't solve overnight. And then one of the big surprises is a lot of the highly developed equipment that they advertise all over the world and sell all over the world is not there in the quantities we would expect them to be. The T-90 tanks, the T-14 tanks are their best tanks. They've got a lot, they have some of them. They have a lot of much older tanks that aren't working very well. A lot of their equipment that has showed up is not in very good shape. And I think when we walk this back a little bit and understand why there's such a disconnect between the Russia who's promoting their military prowess for the last 10 years and what is actually showing up on a battlefield, one of the major reasons for the disconnect is going to be corruption. They have been ripping off billions and billions of dollars every year from the capabilities that they should be getting and buying lesser capabilities with that money, or in some cases, not at all.
General Jack Keane, thank you so much indeed for your insights.